Hello ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, Molten AMF here, and today, we are continuing the AC6 Speedrun Guide series. The topic of this video, every bit of speedrun tech that we will use in the run. By the end of this video, I hope to instill every bit of knowledge you will need for speedrunning this game. We have 5 topics today: movement, EN management, stagger, the pile bunker, and miscellaneous tech. Let's start with the basics. Movement. There are 5 methods of mobility an AC can employ. 1. Standard boosting. 2. Vertical boosting. 3. Quick boosting. 4. Assault boosting. And 5. Assault boost shuffling. Technically, walking is also a form of mobility, but you ever only need to walk in very specific situations, so I'll talk about those when they come up in the individual mission videos. Standard boosting is simple. Just move around while pressing the boost button, and you'll move forward at speed. Boosting is the second slowest mobility tool behind vertical boost. However, unlike every other form of mobility, standard boosting costs no EN, and is in fact the best way to stay mobile while recharging EN. Additionally, standard boosting provides a lot of control to your AC, notably in camera control, where AB sensitivity drop can sometimes be detrimental. Any proper routing of a mission needs to take boosting into account. Where can I recharge EN? Stuff like that. Covering the obvious stuff is necessary even when performing at the highest levels. Vertical boosting is just using EN to move upwards. It is the best way to move vertically. Assault boost can move you up and down, but is relatively slower vertically compared to vertical boosting. Sometimes you just need to move upwards. Vertical thrust is your guy. Quick boosting is a sharp shift in the position of your AC. A quick boost is a lot less generally applicable in a speedrun compared to other mobility options. It's best used as a one-off option. For example, you're approaching a door, you need to wait for your EN to recharge anyway, so finish the assault boost with a quick boost for an extra bit of speed. Spamming quick boosts by themselves is generally slow and a waste of energy. Quick boosts actually have a lot more use in fights. Quick boost bunks are a prime example that I'll be talking about in a bit, but there are other examples like this quick boost in the Ibis second phase to dodge some lasers. Assault boost is the real meat and potatoes. Like I mentioned in the tier list, it is the fastest form of mobility possible. As such, you want to be doing as much of it as possible at all times. Assault boost, recharge, assault boost again. Never stop assault boosting. Optimize your AC for maximum capacity and recharge. Become that one speed edit guy. Assault boost is not without flaw, however. Assault boost restricts your sensitivity and use. This is both helpful and detrimental. Lower sensitivity can really help with landing stuff like P-tail snipes at long distances, but also just sucks for aiming generally. Another point of note is that assault boost gets interrupted if you collide with an enemy or a pulse protection during it. This is a few notable examples like heavy warships colliding with you if you don't move far enough before starting your boost again, or the mealworms in Rusty's mission being easy to hit around that turning point. During these situations, it is best to move normally for a moment until you get to a point safe from collisions. One more important tech related to assault boost is the impact buff. 30% more is nothing to scoff at, and has many applications. Instantly staggering the Ectromoy, facilitating Voltaire's 1 cycles, and many other examples. Further examples where this helps will be discussed in the individual mission videos, but even so, make sure you keep it in mind for when your interkill strats don't work. Finally, the last form of movement is assault boost shuffling. The sideways movement you can perform while assault boosting. The difference between AB and ABS is very interesting. ABS is faster than AB, however ABS costs way more EN than a normal AB, and is also more subject to input error, as the inputs to perfectly shuffle are fairly precise. But remember our purpose here, we are speedrunning. So with all these drawbacks, how do we use the extra speed? The easiest way is identifying distances that can be covered with only shuffling. This is very present in missions like the Combat Logs mission. Many of the logs are close enough together that you can shuffle between them. The harder use is implementing it elsewhere. In standard EN scenarios, shuffling tends to lose time, as the extra consumption is inefficient. And shuffling to the end of an EN tank will cause it a red line, which costs more time. This is unless you're approaching like an obstacle, like a door. If you have to wait for the door to open anyway, you might as well just burn that EN. Basically, only shuffle if you need to wait a moment after finishing. Do that and the shuffling will reduce time. Movement discussion flows nicely into EN management, so let's continue there. As previously established, an AC moves fastest while assault boosting, but assault boosting costs energy. Ergo, we want to maximize energy capacity and recharge. That is why Santai, NGI, and VP20D are the big hitters here. Great capacity, great recharge. Each of these gens have a niche over each other in certain situations. However, the Santai is best overall for the faster base recharge. Very important about recharge is that recharge in the air is slow. As such, you want to stay close to the ground. However, this creates an interesting dichotomy in some scenarios. If I position my AC closer to the ground, I'll recharge faster, but if I continue on straight in the air, I'll gain more horizontal distance. This is best showcased in Wall Climber and Strider. In these scenarios, the best course of action is to stay just high enough above the ground so that the time between stopping your assault boost and landing matches the EN recharge delay. 0.88 seconds for the Santai and 1.09 seconds for the VE-20D. However, it will be slightly slower on the Narc core and the Orbiter core for the earlier parts of the run. Just try to prevent redlining in these cases, and it notably increases recharge time. However, you aren't going to have open ground a lot of the time. Missions like Depth 2 require you to cross large gaps. In these situations, you instead rely on redlining. The burst of EN after the redline time will be much more than what you can recover normally. This is why NGI is so useful. The best redline means a lot less waiting for recharges. Oh hey, if you're enjoying this vid, please drop a like and sub. Every little bit helps. Thanks. With mobility covered, let's move on to the next mechanic. Stagger. Stagger is, of course, very important in the speedrun. Staggering your opponents and then insta-killing them with a bunk is the GOAT strategy. The best way to stagger is with either an AA, shotguns, or back cannons, aka the LCS and needles. AA is used because of its incredibly high burst impact, and the others are used because they deal good damage as well. This is one of the big reasons why you never see pistols used, is because their lack of damage results in the AC surviving the punish damage. Now, every moron can get a stagger, but the more complicated matter is stagger extensions. And to fully explain, I need to drop 3 bombs of extra knowledge. First, there are 4 stagger types in AC6. There's no stagger, medium weights, heavy weights, and ultra heavy weights. No stagger is stuff like turrets and small helicopters. Medium weights is stuff like ACs, Ectromoys, Cell 240, and many other examples. Heavyweights are the 2 Soul units, Bolteus, Enforcer, and ultra heavyweights are stuff like the Cleaner, Spider, and Juggernaut. It's not a perfect analogy, but it covers most. Second, there are 4 stages of stagger. Unstaggered, fresh stagger, recovery, and ACS offline. Unstaggered is the normal state, where you take impact. Fresh stagger is the period directly after getting staggered where you can't move and can get its stagger extended. Recovery is the exit from fresh, but you are still able to get stagger extended. And finally, ACS offline is where you take extra damage but you still have your full mobility. The importance of these distinctions is how they interact with stagger extensions. Medium weights can be stagger extended and are able to be micro staggered, aka that little interruption from kicks, charge melees, and the charge Wurger. Heavyweights are similar but cannot be micro staggered, and ultra heavyweights cannot be stagger extended or micro staggered at all. But thankfully they have very long stagger durations to counteract that. Now, the analogy isn't perfect, there are some outliers, like how the Cataphract is immune to micro stags and extensions, but is not immune to punches and the chainsaw grab, putting it between heavy and ultra weight. And lastly, I would be stupid not to mention stagger continuations. Weapons with multi-hits often have stagger continuations so the enemy doesn't fall out of them. For example, punches, dagger, baton, and the pulse blade. Similar examples. Stagger continuations allow you to stagger extend again. It is also worth mentioning that kicks will immediately break any combo and will cause the enemy to enter ACS offline after the knockback. I mention all of this because proper knowledge on stagger extensions is important for many fights. Some enemies can be stagger extended before bunking, others cannot. And probably the biggest thing, you can't reapply stagger extensions if the enemy has left the fresh state. Not without certain parts anyway. This knowledge is necessary for the pile bunk tech I'll talk about in a moment, so please try to remember. Now, for the part everybody's been waiting for, pile bunker tech. Let's go over the bunk's uses. Firstly, charge punish damage. Short and sweet, enemies staggered, pop the metal stick up their ass. Charge bunk is the best punish. The chainsaw technically does do more damage, but the chainsaw has consistency issues and a longer wind-up in animations. Bunk is usually best. Charge bunk has 2 hitboxes. The first is a light damage that micro staggers and stagger continues to help land the second, and the other is the massive damage. The big one is the moneymaker, but funnily enough there are specific examples where you need to hit both. Like Rummy for example, who after the Wrecker Leg buff can just barely survive an AA bunk if the first hitbox doesn't connect. Regardless, massive punish damage. The second use is charge neutral. The charge bunk deals an impressive impact of 1,800, enough to stagger many ACs and bosses, in addition to the 4.6k damage. The problem being it's very hard to land, but there are many cases where enemies either stand still or have predictable attack patterns, like at Vesper's Cell 240, and against slow bosses like the Spider and Helicopter. The third use is Uncharged. This is mostly just used as a quick finisher if you mess up your quick kill. It deals good damage and impact as well as stagger extends, but unfortunately has a really bad hitbox, so it's very reliable outside of stagger. But if they are staggered, you can just, Charge Bunk. The biggest thing Uncharged Bunk can do, in my opinion, is actually bait enemy AI. Some ACs are programmed to use Assault Armor or Bunk when you use a melee, therefore you can bait it out, cancel into the AA, and then get the Bunk yourself. Very relevant in the new game Raven fight. Now, here we talk about very important stagger extensions and charge Bunk. I think the best example cases are Bolteus and the Cell 240. For Bolteus, the first Bunk we land doesn't extend at all because it was landed after an extension. Two extensions cannot be applied at the same time, aka the Assault Armor extension and the first Bunk hitbox. As such, Bolteus just continues as normal. I also want to quickly mention off script right now, I just came to the realization, Assault Armor kind of functions weirdly, as it doesn't micro stagger you when inflicted normally in unstaggered state, but it does seem to macro extend when you use it as a punish tool, which is very interesting, but yeah, that's just a quick off script thing. However, the second Bunk does continue, as the time between the Zim extension and the Bunk was long enough for Bolteus to enter the recovery stage of Stagger. As such, we were able to get a Stagger continuation again by a different source. And this creates what I refer to as a macro Stagger, knocking the target away but creating time for a follow-up. You can actually see this against enemy ACs. Bunk will create knockback in normal and ACS offline Stagger, but won't do that in fresh Stagger. The second example is against the Ibis. The first phase strat requires a Stagger extension. However, if you Bunk while the Ibis is still in the fresh state, with or without the Stagger extension, the Ibis won't get macro staggered and may instead begin dodging, basically turning the interaction into a coin flip for success or failure with the follow-up needles. Now, I've talked about what happens when you land a Bunk, but now how about actually hitting them? See, the Bunk actually has a very cool mechanic where it doesn't interrupt your current movement. Any current mobility vector will just continue, allowing you to Bunk from distance away, facilitating the following. 5 types of Bunks. Standard Bunks, Moving Bunks, Falling Bunks, Boost Bunks, and Assault Bunks. Standard Bunks are when you Bunk with no movement. It's good for enemies coming to you or when you're already in place. It has a range of 42 meters going by the in-game distance tracker for the second hitbox, and the 37 meters for the first hitbox. In other words, you get an extra 5 meters on the damaging hit. Moving Bunks are when you Bunk while standard boosting, giving you a little forward push. Finding the exact extra range gained by this is difficult, but it's at least 60 meters. Moving Bunks are just something you get a feel for as you Bunk more. Falling Bunks are when you Bunk as you're falling downwards, as gravity is indeed a movement vector. This allows you to Bunk targets below you, giving you a bit extra flexibility. Notable in Grid 086 for bunking the tetrapod. Boost Bunks are when you combo a quick boost into a Bunk. This is quick and fairly easy and gives major difference, extremely useful. Different boosters will give different ranges. For example, Bazel gives 141 meters, NGI gives 160 meters, and Mule gives 141 meters. Which is factoring the speed and the jet duration in. Doing this mid-air and removing the jump from the legs, Bazel has a range of 115 meters. But considering the difference isn't that much, the Bazel works just fine. Boost Bunks are great, but also suffer from a lack of verticality, which is a problem in some scenarios. Finally, Assault Bunks are when you combo an Assault Boost into a Bunk. This provides extra verticality and is very useful in the air. And notably, it is way easier to cancel actions in AB, as the AB startup allows you to do stuff like switch weapons, which is absolutely essential for air and all-mine kill. The biggest problem being is that it is a little slower than a quick boost Bunk, slow enough that ACs can dodge it. You can counter this by staggering during the Assault Boost wind-up, but this is difficult in its own right. Assault Bunks give about 139 meters of range. Overall, you have to find the right Bunk for the right situation, which is something you'll develop as you start running. That's it for the main points, but there's still a few other notable techs I need to mention. Kicks are essential for many quick kills as they tend to mess with enemy AI for a moment. Notably, Freud and Iguazu are prime needle targets after a kick. Notably, combining kick with dual needles is a 1762 impact, which is enough to stagger anything lower than house stability. Continuing with the needles, 2 needles into a Sweet 16 is 2075 impact, enough to stagger the vast majority of just about everything. This is mostly why Shadow is one of the strongest presets. You can't always land those Sweet 16s every time, but it's usually enough to stagger anyway. And for good measure, dual LCS into 16s is set 1793. Respectable as well and notable in New Game. Cannon parts can actually be buffered during kicks to shoot faster once a kick ends. Notably, the stun needle can combo way better with kicks this way. It's also a good time to mention the Boogie Woogie tech. Yes, that's what it's called, I did not call it that. Where you release a charging laser cannon after a quick boost to fire the laser faster. It's less notable in LCS, but is very notable in the other ones. Plasma AoE can sometimes hit through walls. Notably, the 760 PR can destroy turrets from the front if you aim it below the shield, and the charge hammer can actually attack through walls. It's very difficult and inconsistent, but it needs mentioning. Most missiles without a lock-on will start to deviate from the aiming target after some distance, notably downwards. This is mostly the reason why the PFAL was so loved. As well, it isn't immune, the deviation is so negligible it almost isn't a problem. The Haldeman reload is so quickly you can spam between kicks. The Javelin Alpha, unlike other bazookas, doesn't actually stagger extend. It instead causes something similar to a micro stagger, which causes the AC to stay in place. This is actually very abusable, as it can cause enemies to stand still after getting hit. Very notable at Vespers. This also leads into another fun fact. Enemies can't actually see you if they can't see your head, which is a fun fact I learned from my good buddy Anubis. Which also partially helps in the Vesper strat. Napalm, surprisingly, is still affected by Assault Boost 30% impact modifier. The Charged Welder Blade can one-shot PCA machines in the watch point and all mine's goons. And finally, enemies react differently to you depending on your actions, including whether you are hard-locked or soft-locked. It's not completely understood, but I'll mention individual cases as they come up. Just be aware that what you can do can affect enemy AI. And with that, that should be the vast majority of tech you need to know to speedrun this game. Of course, feel free to ask questions in the comments or in the speedrun Discord, and I'll happily answer them. Up next is the individual mission analysis, so be very excited for that. And now for all the obligations. Please like and subscribe, follow me on Twitch, join my Discord, and if so inclined, please support me on Patreon. Every little bit gets me one step closer to quitting my retail job and doing this full time. And now to thank those Patreons. Thank you so much to KZN Too Late and SGRB Sama at Rusty Tier, and with that, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye!